Gregory. Henderson.
Here.
Nierenbarn. Schroer.
Here.
Weber.
Quorum being established, we're going to move into hearing House bills. We will start with House Bill 875. Representative, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senators, for hearing House Bill 875. My name is Darren Chappell. I'm State Representative for the 137th District, which is Greene County. 875 is a very, very straightforward bill that has actually already been passed through this committee in the form of Senate Bill 160 and went over to the House, and we debated it. This was introduced to the House, and we debated it extensively, as we have for many years previous. And it passed the House. It's now over here, and this bill specifically deals with the freedom of association for individuals regarding their beliefs, whether they be religious, political, sociological, whatever the case may be, and simply states that individuals who do not hold to those beliefs cannot be compelled to become leadership within that student organization at the higher educational institutions supported by the state. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the bill. I appreciate your sponsorship. Any questions? Senator, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, thank you for being here. I just wanted to real quickly say thank you.
It's my privilege, Senator.
Thank you for working on this legislation. As you know, this is something that's near and dear to my heart. I appreciate all the effort that you've gone to, and really hoping we can get this across the finish line this year.
Well, we spoke together about it last year. It was my privilege to be able to take up the mantle on the House side for this year. It goes to you and to other representatives before either one of us.
Sure,
this is a long
yeah.
time coming, and I believe the time is right for this bill, having matured to this point, to be passed.
Let's do it. Let's
Thank
do it.
you, sir.
Thank you, Representative.
Any further questions? See none. Thank you. Anyone to testify in support, please come forward. Please remember to fill out witness forms and leave on the table, or at least let us know that you filled one out online if you have.
Good morning. My name is Timothy Faber, and thank you for allowing me to address you concerning House Bill 875. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution states that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof.
I think they need to speak a little closer.
Okay, there we go. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. While the Constitution Amendment does say Congress and not state legislature, I would hope that this legislature would conduct themselves in keeping with the principles set forth in this great Constitution that has guided our nation and protected our rights for nearly 2.5 centuries. With that in mind, the government has no right to prohibit the free exercise of religion. Thus, if a religious body determines that certain tenets of faith are to be upheld, the government has no right to override that, except in very rare and clearly defined cases set forth by the limit tests. And even that's been questioned recently. Students are not exempt from this free exercise of religion. If a student organization determines to follow the tenets of a particular faith, they have the right, as citizens within these United States, to practice that religion and to determine who can be the leaders of that organization according to those religious tenets. Additionally, the First Amendment guarantees the right to the freedom of speech. If an organization has taken a public position on some topic, that position cannot be denied or restricted or compromised by demanding that certain persons holding different views be allowed to be a part of that organization, and certainly not as leaders. To force any organization to allow leadership which disagrees with their own tenets and public positions is to force a message on that organization that violates its own freedom of speech collectively and of its members individually. The First Amendment also guarantees the right of the people to peaceably assemble. But if any organization is forced to allow members who are in disagreement with it, and to even allow them to serve as leaders, how can that be peaceful? The organization would have internal conflict and the rights of those who originally formed the organization would be trampled upon. Certainly, as an organization carries out its purposes over time, it may adjust its own parameters for membership and leadership, and they have the right to do so. But for the government or any government-funded entity, or really for anybody outside of that organization to force such change, is a violation of the people's right to peacefully assemble. Thus, HB 875 is merely clarifying and codifying what the First Amendment to the United States Constitution already guarantees, because there are apparently some who need to be reminded of it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? See none. Thank you. Anyone else to testify in support? Please come forward.
Good morning. My name is Curtis Cole. I represent Chi Alpha Campus Ministries USA. Chi Alpha is a national organization, campus ministry arm of the Assemblies of God, and we actively have 275 chapters nationwide and another 7 here in Missouri, Missouri State University, as well as at SEMO and a handful of other campuses. I'm speaking in favor of House Bill 875. I appreciate your serious consideration of it. I've submitted written testimony. I emailed all of you last week as well, and I appreciate your consideration of those thoughts. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that I think are really relevant here. And I really want to zero in on the freshman who's entering college in one of our universities or colleges around our great state. I don't think there was ever a freshman that ever woke up in the morning and said, hey, I'm excited about going to school today and starting my college education, and I'm really looking forward to fighting with university officials about my opportunities to worship God, for instance. Or perhaps there was never a freshman that said, you know what, I'm looking forward to being ridiculed in the student newspaper or by student government officials on my campus simply because I want to organize a chapter of friends who could worship together and practice their sincerely held religious beliefs. And certainly, I don't think there was ever a freshman who went to school in Missouri that said, you know what, I'd love to be able to have to go to court and spend my entire undergraduate career fighting the university for the right to worship on my campus and organize with other friends who want to do the same. But the reality is this is exactly what's happened around the country when bills like House Bill 875 have not been put into force. And that's exactly the kind of challenge that we're trying to fight today by saying, hey, if we enforce this kind of legislation, what it does is it reminds everybody of what it means to be religious and free in Missouri. I also like this legislation because it does go beyond just the religious liberty issues. But if you think about it, it's very pluralistic, right? So it doesn't matter if I was a Jewish person today, or as an Islamic person, or a Christian, or a Zoroastrian, or some other representation of religion in our country. I would be speaking and saying the same things to you today, because this supports that pluralistic view of what it means to be, again, religious and free in Missouri. Final comment, I was in Washington, D.C. just a couple of weeks ago with my family. We went to the National Archives. We saw the original Constitution and Bill of Rights. And what I love about House Bill 875 is it just underscores the philosophy of our country of the right to assemble, the right to worship, the right to freedom of speech. And that's what House Bill 875 really gives teeth to, and gives a clear rule of law to college administrators that are fighting a number of different ideological ideas out there that would say, you know, we don't really have to honor those original documents from our country. So thank you for your serious consideration of this. And when you're voting, please think about that college freshman and what their experience at the university ought to be like. Thank you very much. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you for your testimony and clarifying exactly what this does and what it doesn't do. I think it's unfortunate that we have to have legislation like this. We would think that an organization or any sort of gathering like this, it would be of like mind, and the leadership would be able to reflect that. And it's just unfortunate that we're even having to sit here and do this. So any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify in support, please come forward.
Good morning, Camelia Peterson with Americans for Prosperity. We have supported this bill and the Senate companion bill all the way through the process and want to reiterate our support for that. I think this is good to clarify. There's a lot of these institutions are usually neutral in their language on these policies, but not always put into practice in an equal and non-discriminatory manner. We think this is good protection for all kinds of groups, and just want to reiterate our support for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Anyone else testify in support, please come forward. Please remember to fill out a witness form if you haven't.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just leave this here as that. Thank you. My name is Lance Kinzer. I'm here on behalf of First Amendment Partnership. We have the privilege of working with some of the nation's largest faith communities on issues of common concern. And I've had an opportunity to testify before this committee and many committees in Missouri on this bill over the years. And I just want to try to clarify a few points. And some of this came across in the testimony of one of the prior conferees. The primary reason states, now 20 states, including Utah earlier this year, added to the list, have passed legislation is to avoid needless controversy and litigation. Campus groups don't want to litigate. No freshman says, hey, I want to spend 4 years litigating against my university, but the reality is that this is happening. What's also happening is that those freshmen or the groups that they represent are winning that litigation. And candidly, if the groups asking for this legislation were looking for controversy, we're on the attack, we're wanting to use their beliefs as some sort of a sword against other people, they would just do nothing, not ask the legislature for any protection, and then sue when these issues come up. The reason that groups like the ones that I interact with are asking for this legislation is because they don't want to do that. They simply want to form their groups, perform their community service work that they do, engage in Bible studies, and all they're really asking is the university should not begin with the presupposition that because you have certain religious views, generally speaking, the controversy has arisen in the context of traditional views around marriage or sexuality, but it can arise in other contexts as well, to say that because you have those views and you want those who lead your group, who communicate your religious message, to share those views and live consistently with them, you're not welcome on campus. And that's how this has typically arisen. A lot of times, as a practical matter, and I'll just kind of close with a couple final thoughts. A lot of times, as a practical matter, what occurs is you've got a group that's been on campus for years and years, sometimes decades and decades. They've always had the same policy. They're asked to, each year, generally speaking, submit their constitution, say what they believe, have that approved. You get somebody within the bureaucracy who is new. They see, oh, this group holds to views that I don't think are correct or that I don't agree with, or does this violate our anti-discrimination policy? They don't realize the background, the context, the fact that throughout our law, the idea that religious groups would use religious standards to determine who their leaders are is not religious discrimination. What's discriminatory is for the government to tell religious groups they can't use religious standards to determine who their leaders are. But somebody within the bureaucracy is confused about that. They tell a student group, you can't form, you can't be recognized. You've got a bunch of kids who don't know what their legal rights are. By the time they figure out, if I've done something wrong, who do I talk to? Generally speaking, they've missed the initial club date. By the time they figure out, oh, there are lawyers who are willing to help me with this, and then months down the line, they get a piece of paper from a federal district court judge saying, hey, the school wasn't supposed to do that to you. If the school's really recalcitrant, we have something happen like happened in Iowa, where 2 separate cases from the University of Iowa went all the way up to the 8th Circuit, and you wound up with a $2 million judgment. This was on viewpoint discrimination, and one of the things that I've heard in debate over and over again is concerns about what about groups with unpopular views, views we disagree with. The 8th Circuit case, the circuit in which Missouri sits, was a viewpoint discrimination case, and the 8th Circuit said very clearly that you can't discriminate. Now, of course, if someone's involved in harassment, if someone's engaged in illegal conduct, All those sorts of things are certainly different. But simply because someone has a viewpoint that the university disagrees with, that's so clearly a constitutional violation that the Eighth Circuit said not only was the University of Iowa liable, but those university administrators who implemented that policy could be found individually liable for viewpoint discrimination. And that ultimately resulted in a $2 million judgment against those individuals. The University of Iowa and the state subrogated, and so the taxpayers ended up paying for it. But the bottom line is this: 20 states, including almost all of Missouri's neighbors, and that includes, making sure I get it right, Iowa, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, all have these provisions in place. It hasn't led to a flood of radical student groups being recognized. It hasn't led to more conflict on campus. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. It's conflict reducing. And so what I would communicate here today is that this bill is common sense. It says that the state cannot tell student organizations, and I want to be clear about this because sometimes this is confusing. Student organizations, the fact that they're recognized on campus does not somehow make them state actors. It doesn't make them the voice of the state. These are independent, private organizations that are simply able to use basically the public square. I mean, in a university, access to club day, these sorts of things are not that much different than in the outside of the campus community, people being able to appear at a public park and communicate their religious message. And so the bottom line is this, and I just think that there's a lot of confusion around what the law already says in this area. The fact that when litigation occurs, these groups can win, and the real reason they're coming to the legislature is they're saying, we don't want conflict. We don't want to use our rights as a sword against anybody. We don't want to get judgments against taxpayers. We basically just want to be left alone to do the basic things that we've always done as student groups, not harming anyone. And so I would ask the committee, as you've done previously on this issue, to give favorable consideration to this bill, to provide clarity in an area of the law that simply doesn't need to be in the courts but can be solved by clear guidance to universities in statute. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Anyone else to testify in support, please come forward.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Dr. Guillermo Villatrueva for the Missouri Catholic Conference, and we would like to go on the record in support of House Bill 875. Well, many of the previous witnesses have already made some excellent points, and I would simply like to reiterate the importance of allowing religious student associations to require their leaders to adhere to their sincerely held beliefs. Catholic associations, for instance, are always eager to spread the good news through outreach and evangelization, and thus they welcome all students as members. However, to teach others about the faith, leaders need to know the faith in the first place, and to live in accordance with it in the second place. It's that simple. This bill would merely prevent public universities from denying religious student associations the same benefits that are available to every other student organization on campus. With that said, I would like to commend the sponsor of the bill for bringing it forward and urge this committee to vote to pass on House Bill 875. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to take them.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Please, did you leave a witness? Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Anyone else to testify in support? Please come forward. Seeing none. Anyone to testify in opposition? Please come forward.
Good morning. We're still morning. Sharon Callaway-Jones here today on behalf of the Missouri State Conference of the NAACP and Promo, Missouri. We are opposed to the bill as written, but instead of going into the details of the bill, I would just ask the committee to consider looking at the compromise language that Senator Hudson and Senator Weber worked out on the Senate perfected version and include that language in this, and that would make us neutral on the bill. That was a long worked out conversation that I know the two senators had the night that it was up on the floor here in the Senate. It's something that we think balances the needs of all student groups on campus and doesn't do anything to impact the underlying intent of the two bills. So we would just ask that you make it look like the perfected version coming out of the Senate.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions? See none.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify in opposition? Please come forward.
Good morning, David Lee Brush with the Missouri Equity Education Partnership, and we also oppose this bill as written, but would support the amended language of Senate Bill 160 that was worked out, and echo what NAACP and Promo said. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions? See none. Anyone else testify in opposition, please come forward.
Thank you. My name is Jonda Boyce. I live in Kansas City, Missouri. I have never testified in Jefferson City before. I'm here as a citizen. I live in the Brookside neighborhood in Kansas City. I've also lived in Springfield and Willard and Cape Girardeau. My mom's family goes back many generations in Christian County, Missouri. I'm a proud Missouri attorney as well and a proud graduate of Southeast Missouri State University. While at SEMO, I served for over 2 years as the president of the LGBTQ Student Association, and I was involved in lots of things throughout campus for those 4 years. I was in an emerging leaders training group, on the student judicial board, in the symphonic wind ensemble, and much more. I think it's really unfair for colleges and universities to be required to register and fund groups that discriminate. Student activity fees are almost always the way that they pay for student group funding. And I think it's unjust to require students to pay into a fund that will, under this bill, be required to distribute the funds to groups that have anti-LGBTQ or even racist policies. Yesterday, I went to SEMO's student organization webpage, and I was happy to see that they have lots of information and encouragement about how to create new student groups. Funding from 2 different sources was offered, as well as free promotion, free use of meeting spaces on campus. As was mentioned earlier, you get to come to the fair and have a table and tell people about your group. Also among the requirements were, quote, a constitution or bylaws with the university's anti-hazing policy and a non-discrimination statement. And also that organizations must be open to all students. And many religious and political organizations were linked there, that are groups that exist on campus. The bottom line is that campus policies that prohibit discrimination by student groups don't discriminate against religious, political, and ideological student groups. Instead, this bill, as written, creates a special right for such groups to enforce their own discriminatory policies and just throw their college or university's policy out the window. Such groups, in my opinion, they're free to work and form for their ideals. As an earlier speaker said, I think that they are free to have a chapter of friends and worship together and practice their religious beliefs, but not with recognition and funding from the student government that when that college or university has a non-discrimination policy. They can exclude gay people or trans people or people of color, but not with the student funds that come from the students that they seek to exclude. I think that the STEMO Student Life website gets it right. It says, getting involved on campus is a great way to connect with other students, gain important experience on your resume, and have fun. I benefited greatly from my leadership experience and my training in the Emerging Leaders Group at my alma mater, and I urge this committee to vote no on the bill or amend it, as was mentioned by the previous 2 speakers in opposition, that as Senate Bill 160 was, to prohibit discrimination by student groups against other students. Thank you for listening to my testimony today. I'm open for questions.
So did, you had stated you were a part of a group at your college. Now, did that university, I guess, disseminate your literature and things like that as well?
We were a recognized group. We were funded, and we were able to use free meeting facilities at that time, yes, and
Okay.
I'm sure that's still true.
So, I mean,
Been a little
there's
while.
opposing world viewpoints, I guess, so why should one that get, like a group like that you were ahead of receive that funding, but another that has opposing viewpoints not?
Because we did what SEMO requires. We had a constitution and bylaws that said all comers, and the organization would adhere to the university's non-discrimination statement.
Okay, but I mean, as an organization for LGBTQ plus, I guess,
And allies.
but if you were required to have in your leadership somebody who had the polar opposite viewpoint to be in your leadership, wouldn't that be kind of working in opposition as to what the tenets of the goal of your organization would be?
The group definitely took all comers, and I wouldn't want to be in a group.
But if they were in leadership making the decisions and the direction, that would be kind of, to the opposite of what your organization is, correct?
That organization should lose its funding if it said you can't be in leadership. I also want to point out, as I mentioned, I'm an attorney, so I read everything that's in here.
Yeah.
I think that when you say if you are in the leadership or you participate in the establishing the criteria for the association's leadership or governance, that really, I think, will end up being interpreted to mean any member, not just leadership, because members vote on bylaws, members vote on the establishment of criteria for the association's leadership or governance. So I think that the focus on leadership by previous speakers who were in support is misleading.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just, I have a tough time if one receives taxpayer funding to, I guess, disseminate literature or whatever of one group, and to say that another does not receive that and afforded the same, I guess, treatment. That's where I feel that is discriminatory, and that's why we need this. So
I agree with you that group should lose its funding if it said that you cannot come here and seek leadership if you don't agree with us. I think we agree.
Any questions? Senator, proceed.
Thank you for being here. Did you say this is your first time testifying for?
It is.
All
So
right.
even though I'm an attorney, I'm really nervous.
I remember when I was in the House the first time I presented a bill on the Senate side. It can be kind of intimidating, but welcome. I appreciate your testimony. I do want to kind of reiterate a little bit some of the things that the chair had to say. You indicated that you were a part of a group on campus that was. Could you say the title of your group again? The name.
It has changed over the years. It was some time ago, I'll be honest, but an LGBTQ student group that also accepted allies.
Okay, yeah, and so what the representative's bill here is doing is it would just merely codify in state statute what the First Amendment already allows, and this would give the particular group that you were a part of the right to say that we're not going to have individuals leading this group that don't believe or haven't bought into the group's mission and the group's belief system, and likewise, a group that believes differently than that group would be able to have leadership that adheres to the mission and the principles of their group. And there's already case law out there that says you cannot restrict student fees going to groups based on a group's viewpoint. And the court's reasoning for that was saying student fees are going to go, yes, to some groups that you may disagree with, but they're also going to go to some groups you agree with. And that's, the beauty of our nation. That's the beauty of the First Amendment, the ability of you and I maybe to disagree on an issue, but be a part of a group where individuals believe in a particular mission, a particular principle, and have leadership that is bought into that belief system or believes that belief system. So really what the representative's bill here is trying to do, and I'm very familiar with it because I've worked on this issue for years, we're not discriminating against anyone. We're wanting everyone to have equal protection under the First Amendment, as it should be. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony.
Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Anyone else to testify in opposition? Please come forward. Please remember to fill out a witness form if you haven't.
Good morning, committee members. Sage Quorum on behalf of the ACLU of Missouri, here to go on record in opposition. We submitted our opposition in the House as well, and as well to the Senate companion bill. The issue here is not whether the student organizations are free to have their beliefs or associate. They can. The issue is whether they have the right to be recognized and funded by student activity fees that all students pay into. This is not about the viewpoint of the organization so much as it is the conduct of the organization. By having discriminatory policies in terms of who can join the group or who is eligible for leadership, that is a conduct. And so that is the issue with the bill, not the difference in viewpoint. Thank you.
Proceed, Senator.
Yeah, just real quick. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. I don't want to spend too much time plowing ground that's already been plowed, but since you brought up the student activity fees, that issue has already been settled in case law. I don't know if you're aware of the, and the name escapes me right now, but Rosenberg versus Virginia, I believe, is what it is. I would encourage you to look that up and see what the court had to say about student activity fees going to groups of various viewpoints. But thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony.
Am I able to respond to that? Okay. So there's also the Supreme Court case, Christian Legal Society versus Martinez, and there is, right, we are seeing these bills introduced across the country, and there is ongoing litigation in all these cases as well. But really, that said, that universities can impose conditions for recognized student groups as long as those conditions are reasonable and viewpoint neutral, and an anti-discrimination policy is viewpoint neutral.
That's okay. Any further questions? See none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify in opposition?
Mr. Chairman,
Well, we've already unfortunately passed. Maybe you can do, if you just want to submit your test. Well, you did? Okay. All right.
My name is Brian Kaler. I lead Warden Way, a Christian nonprofit in Missouri since 1896. In addition to being a Baptist minister, I've also been a public university professor, and in that role, I was a faculty advisor for student organizations, so I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the issues involved here. And I think it's really important. There's been clear problems. The University of Iowa is a clear example, right, of a university that got it wrong. And then we have the California Supreme Court case, U.S. Supreme Court case out of California that was just referenced, that goes in the other direction. And both those really basically come down to the idea of, are you treating all groups equally? And this bill doesn't actually quite do that. It still only creates a certain category. So Iowa got in trouble because they targeted one group, whereas in California they were okay because they had the same rules for all student organizations. I think it's really important to note that what's happening here is not purely an issue for the First Amendment or religious liberty rights, because in many ways it restricts the rights of students to pick their own leadership. It's trying to empower outside organizations to put the limits on who students want to elect as their own student leaders. And I think that's important. I think we should trust the students who know their peers and decide who is engaged and involved and who they want to lead their own organizations. And this bill is a limit on that. And so I think that is, without some sort of significant amendments, I would urge a vote against this. I know you're probably going to pass anyway because it's already passed, but I appreciate the chance to offer the opposite perspective. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Anyone else to testify in opposition? See none. Informational purposes only. Okay. See none. Do you have any closing remarks, Representative?
Just very briefly. December 15th, 1791, the Bill of Rights was passed, the First Amendment being chief among them, the first one listed, is an example of the supreme compromise made by the Founding Fathers. Every single colony, except for Virginia, which was always about tobacco, and Georgia, which was established as a penal colony, thinking that if the Spanish invaded, they ought to have to run through the criminals first. Every other colony was created as a religious, institutionally based colony. And it was not that they did not believe in state religions. State religions actually continued to exist on the books until 1948. It was that they could not decide on which one ought to be the national religion. And so the First Amendment simply said, Congress shall make no laws declaring an establishment of religion. And it was not incorporated until Gitlow v. New York, 1921, to the states. But I want to encourage everyone to understand that this bill is broader than religious questions. This bill protects every ideological perspective. There is not a single student association in existence that is not protected by this bill. And it does not mean that students cannot choose their leaders. It means that students cannot be compelled by the university to choose leaders that do not represent their views and their desires, not just in religion, but politically, economically, sociologically, whatever the student association may be. And this bill does not allow for any organizations to exist that the law of the land does not already permit. This bill just simply says that freedom of association is one of the premier fundamental rights of this country, and you do not lose that simply because you enrolled in a higher institution. Thank you, committee.
Well, thank you very much. That will conclude the hearing on House Bill 875. We will move to House Committee Substitute for House Bill 1363, 1062, and 1254. Representative. Oh, there. Proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. George Hruza, District 89 representative. So this bill came to me because the St. Louis public school system has dozens of unused school buildings. Enrollment has been going down, lots of empty school buildings. At the same time, public charter schools have been increasing significantly because they really seem to have a lot of success in educating our students in those areas. Yet they've had a challenge finding buildings to get involved in. We visited one charter school where we had it's out of 2 warehouses that were converted into schools, and on the hill right next to them is a stately, gorgeous brick school building which sits empty. And the reason is that there are deed restrictions, 99-year deed restrictions on St. Louis public school buildings, which says that they cannot be sold for gambling, for liquor sales, and for educational charter school buildings, the charter schools. So this bill simply voids those deed restrictions to say that there will be no restrictions as far as the building being able to be sold, transferred, or leased to charter schools. So it's a permissive building. It's permissive. It's not requiring the public school system to sell those buildings, but it removes that restriction so that they can, if they so choose, to sell them. Thank you. Any questions?
All right. Thank you, Representative. Any questions? Senator, proceed.
Just a comment. Thank you, Representative. It's an outstanding bill. I appreciate you and having the courage to bring it. I'm going to be assisting you on the Senate side. Let me know what you need.
Thank you
so much.
All right. Thank you very much. Any further questions? Oh, Senator, proceed.
Representative, this deals with St. Louis City.
Well, it's statewide, but I'm aware St. Louis City is where these restrictions are in place. I found out during researching the building is that Kansas City, for example, does not apparently have those kinds of deed restrictions. So it's not specific for city, but that seems to be the area where that is the problem.
Are you aware of any place outside of St. Louis City that has these restrictions?
I am not aware.
Okay. And do you represent St. Louis City?
I represent St. Louis County.
So, yes or no question, do you represent St. Louis City?
Oh, sorry, I do not.
Okay, so you're bringing a bill to void restrictions in an area you don't represent. I know that there's a lot of representatives who do represent St. Louis City. Why are you bringing the bill and not them?
Well, they are. This bill is along with Representative Terry. She does have a little bit of the St. Louis City in her district.
Okay.
And also Ben Baker.
Why are you carrying this bill?
I'm carrying this bill because I think it's really important for our students. Even though I'm representing the.
You've got it so figured out that you're ready to govern St. Louis City as well. Why you've already figured out how to represent St. Louis County. Now you're ready to go and tell St. Louis City how they should fix themselves too. Huh?
So I'm interested in having the students in Missouri have the best possible education. And I believe that deed restrictions such as these make it
Mr.
difficult.
Chairman, I'm just absolutely sick of the legislature coming in and trying to overturn and run the entire state from the legislature. It's all we did yesterday. All we did yesterday on the Senate floor was this body try to tell local governments how they should operate and that we're smarter than they are. And I'm just sick to death of senators and representatives coming in here and telling communities how they should run themselves. I'm absolutely tired of it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Anyone to testify in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Tricia Workman here today representing the Missouri Charter Public School Association. We'd like to go on record in support. I do want to say that these deed restrictions are not always enforced. They are 99 years. So some of the issues that have come up is, let's say a property is transferred to somebody that's not a charter school, and then they would like to sell it to a charter school. The deed restriction's still there, and it's at the whim of the district as to whether or not it's enforced. I do believe that some of these deed restrictions have also existed in Kansas City Public Schools. Again, we've had some good partnerships with the districts where we've been able to transfer buildings. This by no means requires them to sell them to charters or to any other entity. It just takes us out of being lumped with things that are arguably dangerous to kids, like gun stores, liquor stores, and other things.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any questions? See none. Thank you. Anyone else to testify in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dienoff, State Public Advocate. I submitted my form online a few days ago. Back on February 24th of this year, I appeared before the House public hearing in emerging issues on that committee, and I testified in support because I feel that no city, village, township, or county shall pass and enact any ordinances prohibiting the sale, rent, lease, transfer of any school property in the best interest of the public in the political subdivisions. I think that if there's an alternative education means, and if the building is sitting idle, there's a lot of buildings in St. Louis City public school system that are sitting idle, being vandalized, graffiti, broken windows. It's an eyesore and a detriment to the community. There's homeless people that are unfortunately living in these buildings. The City of St. Louis Public School District and their Board of Education in the last 25, 30 years, I can probably 5 or 6 projects of former elementary and middle schools that have been converted into condo communities and also apartment buildings. So I'm not exactly sure why we're not trying to keep it in the realm of educational related, because it was an education building, but there's many examples across St. Louis City where buildings that were sitting there idle and being vandalized went for condo communities and are current apartment buildings today. The great issue on this HCS HB1363, 1062, and 1254 is that there's no requirement, it's not being forced, and it's not being mandated. And for those reasons, I believe this is common sense legislation. It's a no-brainer, and therefore I support HCS HB1363, 1062, and 1254. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions? See none. Anyone else to testify in support? Okay, see none. Testify in opposition. Please come forward. Okay. You might have scared him away. I don't know. All right. For informational purposes only, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Steve Carroll, registered lobbyist here. For informational purposes, I represent the St. Louis Public Schools, have for the last 27 years. I think this bill is really a solution in search of a problem that no longer exists. Currently, the school district has sold a building to a charter school, the Gateway Science Academy, currently using one of our old buildings. At the same time, we're leasing for free 2 buildings to KIPP. We just recently had to put in $500,000 for a new boiler for that charter school. So it's not like we're not working, with our charters, because I think we are. The SAB, back when the state took it over, put something in place to do this, but it's no longer followed. The last 4 years, the elected board, there hasn't been one charter school come to the St. Louis Public School and want to buy one of the buildings. What you're seeing, I think, mostly is a lot of charters are buying buildings in downtown St. Louis, office buildings, because they're cheaper to run, to have bathrooms. They don't have asbestos problems. It's better lighting, better plumbing. I think we have 17 buildings on the market right now, and we're currently with an RFP to hire a new broker that probably won't have these deed restrictions in them. But the local elected board has not been following that policy at all. I mean, the majority of the buildings that we have on the market are 100 to 125 years old. And the cost of maintenance, most charters don't want to take that on. So I really don't think it's a problem. It doesn't need to be in state statute. I think the local jurisdiction can take care of the problem, but just wanted to bring that to your attention, what we're currently doing, because any proposal to buy a building has to come before the building committee on the board. They listen to the proposal, and then usually what actually happens is an alderman will have a public hearing in that neighborhood and find out what the neighbors want if they think that building should be used for a particular purpose. I know that they had one hearing where a potential bidder wanted to turn it into a federal halfway house. The neighborhood didn't want it, and so the board didn't sell it for that purpose. We try to work with the neighborhoods and with the local entities. So that's kind of how it currently works. Just wanted to come up and provide that information to the committee.
Well, thank you for the clarification. Any questions? See none. Thank you very much. Anyone else for informational purposes only? See none. Closing remarks, Representative.
Thank you so much. Yes, and I agree that those have not been enforced recently. The issue is that they are still on the deeds, and so we really taking those off is not going to obligate the public schools to do anything different from what they're doing, but it does make sure that it's not on there, and certainly a second owner down the road potentially wouldn't have that restriction either. So this is really an easy kind of, I consider it a cleanup and not really changing that much what is going on currently.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Committee Substitute for House Bill 1363. We're going to move to, we're going to pause real quick. We're going to go into executive session. If I could get a second. Give a second. I make a motion, we are in executive session. I make a motion that we bring up Senate Bill 594. I have a second. This is Senator Berger's 10 Commandments bill. I didn't have a chance to actually get an amendment written up, but I do make a motion for an amendment. I guess I would just do it by voice to amend the line. This is on page 1, line 12. Changing the kill to murder, and that would be the duration of that amendment. It'd be one change. So, any discussion on that? Okay. I figured. Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of that change signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. I now move that we move Senate, roll that into a committee substitute. Well, don't we need to roll that into a substitute and then adopt a substitute, or just amended?
As amended. It'll be a substitute or a down to.
Okay. So I make a motion that we move Senate Bill 594 as amended do pass. I have a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Bratton.
Aye.
Hudson.
Aye.
Gregory. Henderson. Nierenberg. Schroer. Weber.
Senator Schroer did leave his vote with an aye for myself. So 4-1, the motion passes. We were going to bring up 607 this week, but we had some additional changes to that, and we'll bring that up next week for executive session for the members. So I make a motion that we move out of executive session. Second. All right, we're out of executive session. Now, Representative Gallick, you may proceed with hearing your House Bill 232. Begin when you're ready. Thank you.
I need a booster seat. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senators. I think it's still morning. I am Representative Sherry Gallick. I am from District 62, which is Cass and Bates County. I am here to present a proactive initiative to enhance school safety with a comprehensive emergency plan. While the bill's primary focus was on AED machines and educational setting, it's safety measures that extend to everyone that goes to a school site. It's not just children, it's not just the janitors, it's not just the staff. For instance, there could be events at Belton High School. They have senior citizen luncheons, athletic competitions, community meetings, intramurals, and school board sessions. So that is why I believe that the safety is of paramount importance. Also, this bill is bipartisan. There were two bills in the Senate, Senate Bill 166 and Senate Bill 155. I am told that they were voted out of committee at 7-0 and then off the Senate floor at 32-0. My Amendment 2 just makes this the same as the Senate version. It actually recommends that an AED be accessible within 3-minute radius because there is data that expresses and communicates that the quicker that you get the AED, the more likely the individual is to live and to have a full life. Amendment 3 calls for physical security enhancements by strengthening the overall school safety. It has upgrades like bullet-resistant windows and doors, bullet-resistant window film, intruder door locks, intruder response training. It also expands the Courage to Report system to facilitate fast and secure threat reporting, as well as providing a safety coordinator. And then Amendment 4 ensures student discipline is managed case by case, promoting fairness over a blanket policy. And just as routinely as we have tornado drills and fire drills, this bill is about being prepared. Ensuring schools have the training and the tools to respond swiftly when every second counts. Being prepared does not just prevent potential tragedies, it empowers communities to respond quickly, adapt effectively, and protect what matters most. And with that, I will take questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Senator, proceed.
In the one part of the bill, it looks like the Safe Schools Act was passed back quite a few years ago, and you're trying to add some things that will be reportable, and I like that aspect, I guess is what I'm getting at. Is that what we're trying to do there with the Safe Schools Act? Had some reporting requirements, and this is going to up some of those reporting requirements and make juvenile maybe play a little nicer with the schools where they can get that information so that they you know, in the past, that's kind of how we got to the Safe Schools Act. For some who don't know that, was the school wasn't told about behavioral risk, and I saw that's in here, and some of the things with a particular student and a young girl lost her life out of that. We got the Safe Schools Act, which kind of became a zero tolerance policy, and I think you try to do away with that, but make better reporting. Is that correct?
Correct. And I have somebody also that can speak more on the safety aspect of some of that. But it is to encourage people to come forward, especially if they feel that there is a threat, and to have protocols in place to be prepared. So again, you said that someone lost their life. Again, with the AED machines, the reason that this is important is because there was an AED machine in a school setting, and they had intramurals afterwards, but the AED machine was locked in the principal's office, so that person just, ended up dying, unfortunately, and they might have been saved. So,
and I'm going to tell you, I like your bill. I'm also going to say, because I've said it to this committee a couple times, they have 1,044 hours. That hadn't changed in decades of educational time, and we keep putting more things on which do take away from reading, writing, and arithmetic, the main things they're doing. Now, at the same time, I'm not going to argue that we shouldn't be making kids safer. I never make that argument. But I just kind of want to keep pointing out that every time we do that, we do take time away from those basics that we all worry about with our kids. But thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? See none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone to testify in support, please come forward. Please remember to fill out a witness form.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is John McDonald. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Missouri School Boards Association, Center for Education Safety. CES is the recognized school safety resource center in the state of Missouri. I've been in the school safety space now for almost 20 years. I'm the architect of the post-Columbine tragedy school safety plan. In my career, I've responded to 7 school shootings and hundreds of threats across the country. I work with parents of murdered children, students impacted by violence, as well as educators and leaders who find themselves trying to navigate a new normal where they are the emergency manager of the classroom and the first responder of the hallway. In the past week in this country, we've had 2 school shootings and 3 stabbings. I don't know when the next threat's going to happen in Missouri, when the next school shooting will happen here, but I do know it will. We've had 18 school shootings in the state of Missouri. We've had 11 kids murdered, and we've had 17 wounded in our schools. We've had another 9 school shootings happen just outside the school building. The threats of today are really different. Senator, you talked about educational time being impacted. You're absolutely right. Educational time is being impacted every day by the threats that schools face. It's being impacted by students that are out of control in classrooms, tearing classrooms apart, impacting all the other kids who are just trying to learn, thrive, grow. And we are struggling. This bill codifies and changes the paradigm of school safety in Missouri. Right now, there are no standards, and schools are really vary across the state in terms of how prepared they are. We've had over 20 schools impacted by tornadoes in the last couple of weeks. And this bill really prepares for any emergency, and I think any emergency is critical. The threat of our time is really unique. The threat of our time is everything from fentanyl to suicidal ideation. It's social media and threats of planned school attacks. It's not going away. It's getting more aggressive. What this bill does is it creates a foundation of school safety for the state that tells every student that you matter, that your safety matters. It tells every educator and every parent the same thing. So I'm honored to be here to talk about something that is absolutely essential. 21st century learners need 21st century safety. This bill starts to provide that. One thing I know in managing a lot of tragedy is that 4 things happen. You have loss of life, lost trust, litigation, and legislation. We have an opportunity to shift the paradigm. Let's start with some legislation that creates a reasonable standard of care for everybody to follow and build on that. And if we do that, I think we have significant opportunity to create safer school environments, which create safer community environments. Thank you very much.
I would wholeheartedly agree with you. So I authored a school protection officer program, which would, and unfortunately, arm teachers, administrators, make them go through a very extensive training program. And several school districts have actually implemented that. And actually, one that I represent, I was able to participate in drills while students were there. And we had a school resource officer scenario, and it was a 14-minute response time in order to get to my location where I was supposed to be the deemed shooter. And with the school protection officer, where you have actual teachers, it was less than like 2 minutes to confrontation for me being the active shooter. I understand that nobody wants it. I know in a Pollyanna world we shouldn't have to, but I think it's way past due for school districts to get really serious and realize that whether or not, kind of like a tornado, whether or not you want a tornado to go through your school, you have to prepare for it. And it's the same way with school districts. And instead of tying the hands of being able to implement these policies, they need to get behind the necessary need to do so. So, at any rate, I know that's kind of I'm not trying to filibuster that or anything. I appreciate you realizing that this is a necessity, especially post-Columbine. I remember when I was in school, I mean, we used to go to school with our guns in our truck waiting to go deer hunting and turkey hunting, and we'd show them off in the parking lot. And I kid you not, and even showing teachers, no big deal. But that's not the world we live in today. And I know it makes me like date myself, but that was like, I graduated in 1999. I mean, so that was like right at Columbine. So I came from a different world as opposed to where we're at today. I mean, it's unbelievable. Senator, did you have questions?
I got one statement. You and I spoke in my office earlier. So we had this conversation earlier. I was actually a high school principal, about 32 years old, when Columbine happened. And we had a kid drop a note in the bathroom 7 days later saying there's a bomb in the building, which there was not. But I lived through that, so I understand what you're talking about. And I do think we need to get with it. The only reason I made the statement I did a while ago is all these things we're doing, we need to do. I'm not saying that. But then we take away time and the other because 1,044 hours still doesn't change. But thank you for bringing this.
Any further questions? See none. Thank you very much. Anyone else to testify in support?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Kaina Iman on behalf of the American Heart Association and the Missouri Nurses Association. We support this bill, and like you said, schools do have tornado response programs, and I think the sponsor has mentioned that before in her her presenting the bill, but we would like to ensure that the plan includes staff that are trained in CPR, AEDs that are on site and accessible, not locked in the principal's office, an annual drill, and plans that are integrated into the local EMS protocols. So, that I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? See none. Anyone else testify in support? Please come forward. Don't be bashful.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Megan Howerton here on behalf of the Missouri Ambulance Association. It can take ambulance teams several minutes to arrive to a scene, especially if they are in rural districts. So having an AED machine or kit available on site can save lives. So we are in support of the bill.
Any questions? See none. Thank you very much. Anyone else testify in support?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dinoff, State Public Advocate. I submitted my electronic submission a few days ago. Back on February 18th, I appeared at a public hearing for House Bill 232 before the House Committee on Health and Mental Health, and I was a proponent. Since then, the bill has greatly increased in terms of size requirements. A lot of these are emergency critical needs, in my opinion. I kind of have some heartburn that it's taking away local control, like it was kind of mentioned from the senator from Jefferson County. But these are issues that save lives, such as the cardiac emergency response plan, the external defibrillators, and I want to stop there. Because right now, if something happened in this building, I don't even know where the defibrillators are. There's no instructions. There's no directions on where they are. And I think that there needs to be something posted at the beginning of the building, or a map, or something to familiarize people with where these defibrillators are. The same with the fire alarms. You know, I was at a county meeting in St. Charles County, and we had a fire in a newly installed air conditioning unit, and I couldn't find the fire alarms. And so I'd call 911, and there were people in the building, and they didn't know that there was a fire and they had to be evacuated. So I think it's really important that we make these designated for the public and for everybody involved. I believe that, you know, it's a no-brainer. All employees of all school districts should be trained every few years in first aid, CPR, and the ADA machine. Comprehensive emergency operations plan to address school safety, crisis, and emergency operations. And I also want to stop there. The Safe Schools Act is very important to me. I go to a lot of school board meetings, and there's a play on games with money. And I think it comes with the daily attendance rate. When there's violence or assaults or things happening in our public schools, there needs to be, the law needs to be followed, and they need to report that to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. A lot of times they handle it in-house. They don't contact the school resource officer or don't contact law enforcement. And I think they need to have an obligation to be held accountable and responsible to notify DESE and to comply with the Safe Schools Act. They want to sugarcoat it, and it comes down to the daily attendance rate. They don't want to lose the money, and that's really unfortunate that money is the capitalist over the safety of students and staff. A safety coordinator responsible for these programs, that's going to be a cost to the local school district, but I think it is something that's necessary, and it's a no-brainer. Each interior door with an anti-intruder door lock and exterior door with bullet-resistant window film. That could be burdensome to some rural school districts. We need to find ways to find appropriations to help these school districts. We have, I believe, 536 school districts throughout Missouri. Requires behavioral risk assessments when enrolling a pupil, and I think that's definitely needed. I think the school personnel should know what the background and what a juvenile, what they're capable of and what their mental capacity is, and if they're a threat to the school community. Prohibit any zero tolerance disciplinary policy. I'm all for that, because too many times you hear of too much violence in our public schools, and we need to curtail that, and we need to make sure that the Safe Schools Act is being mandated and followed, and it's not as today as we sit here today. The resuscitation training for cardiac plan, I think that's important. And it comes down to the Safe Schools Act that there needs to be true and accurate reporting, no fibbing or failure to report because of money. I believe safety overrides any monetary value. For those reasons, I support HB 232 with the added amendments. However, I'd encourage the committee to offer appropriations to school districts who are on a limited budget. And as we all know, the federal education funds are going to be cut. And I believe, although our Constitution calls for 25% of our income goes to education needs and education programs, and we're well beyond that right now, but I believe that we're going to see some cuts in the following years. For those reasons, I support HB 232. Thank you.
Any questions? See none. Thank you. Anyone else to testify in support?
Chair, members of the committee, Jessica Petrie here on behalf of Kids Win Missouri and BJC St. Louis Children's Hospital. Want to go on record in support specifically on the cardiac emergency response section. We believe this could save kids' lives in case of an emergency, so appreciate the sponsors' work.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions? See none. Thank you. Anyone else testify in support? Okay. See none. In opposition? Okay, see none. Informational purposes only. Okay, see none. Representative, if you want to close.
Yeah, a couple of things. The AEDs, I know on the House side, I honestly don't know on the Senate side, but it probably is probably mirrors it. It's by the elevator. They are clearly marked, and it guides you through it. You don't really have to know how to do it. It tells you, put a, patch or whatever they're called. It tells you specifically what to do. The other thing is I recall, I'm older than you, so I recall in high school with people with a lot of guns in the back of their trucks. And they sat there all day and they were open and nobody stole them, nobody did anything with them. So you're right, but today is a different world. And 2 weeks ago I had a couple of kids from Belton that were shadowing me. And when I asked them what their primary concerns were, school safety did come up. So I think that that's relevant. So.
Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing, and that concludes our Education Committee. I make a motion that we adjourn. Second. Have a second. We are adjourned.